Hello, everyone. Okay, we'll be starting now. Can you all hear me?
Yes, please, you can.
All right. We'll be starting now. I think we should say a short prayer. Is that fine?
Sure,
Hello?
that should be good.
Hello, Mike. Are we there?
Yes, Dorcas, please, you can go on.
All right. Father, we thank you for this meeting today. Thank you because it's going to be a success and you speak to our hearts. We thank you for the speaker tonight. We ask that you speak through her. May her words become healing and knowledge to all of us. And may that will join us soon in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, welcome everybody. I think members are yet to join. But either way, I think she just starts. They can always watch the recap. So I will start by introducing our guest. Thank you once again, Ma, for joining us. It's such a privilege. I hope you can all hear me.
Can hear you.
All right.
Thank you for your gracious welcome.
You're welcome, Ma. Thank you so much. All right. I'll just give a brief a recap of our guest's portfolio. So Dr. Chika Nya Etok is an experienced counselor in the pastoral tradition, certified in crisis counseling by Institute of Counseling, Glasgow, UK. Also certified by Trauma Healing Institute of American Bible Society as a trauma healing group and training facilitator. She's the CEO of Soul Health Wellness Company, Abuja. Her clients span from across diverse sectors, including schools, corporate professionals, NGOs focused on delivering trauma-informed care and leadership, parents, faith-based organizations, and workers in the care professions. Chika is the initiator and driver of EPL, Eat, Play, Laugh, events which are curated to help busy adults to find moments of beauty in the frenzy of life. She's a public health physician with over 35 years experience as a doctor and a former country medical advisor of Unilever, Nigeria. Chika is a fellow of Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators of Nigeria. Chika is married and has 3 adult children and a delightful grandson. Okay, this is awesome. Welcome, Ma. It's so good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
but you didn't tell me your name, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know yours.
I'm sorry, Ma. My name is Dorcas Amusha.
Okay, nice to meet you.
I'm community manager for Women Lighthouse Community.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your.
It's so good to have you.
Introduction. Thank you. It's a pleasure to share a bit with everyone too.
So much.
Okay, so sometime last year, I believe it was April or so, I had a session with the Women Lighthouse that's called Overcoming Trauma.
Nice.
Yes, so we were introducing that to help ourselves as adults. But today we're talking about trauma-informed parenting because we're now thinking about our children. You know, how do you know when a child has been traumatized by an experience the child has gone through? How can you prevent such things? How can you help the person to recover if it has already happened and you couldn't prevent it? So we're going to just dig into some of those issues. I usually like to get feedbacks. So I'm just seeing 3 people here. So I don't know who. Dorcas, are you the only person that will be giving me a feedback?
No, other persons will be joining us soon, Ma.
Okay, so because I'm told we don't have a lot of time, and there's really quite a bit I'd like for us to cover, I'll start straight away.
All right, Ma.
Okay, so when we say trauma-informed, people might wonder, what does that mean? Every parent wants to, at least every reasonable parent wants to bring up their child to be the best and to prevent any harm that they can to the child. But it doesn't always work out that way. In fact, research shows that children are harmed the most by their parents, even when they don't intend to do so. So what actually is childhood trauma? So childhood trauma is the experience of a frightening, dangerous, or violent event that the child perceives as a threat or is actually a threat to that child. It's important to note that it's about perception, the perception of the child. As an adult, you might look at something and think it's harmless, maybe because of previous information you have or previous experience. But if to that child, the child perceives that experience as frightening, as dangerous, as violent, then that experience is potentially traumatizing for that child. So apart from the perception of something being frightening or dangerous or violent, it's also important to note that for children and even for adults, but since we're talking about children now, even if nothing happens to them, but they hear about something that happened to somebody else, or they witness something that happens to somebody else that threatens their life or their physical security in any way, that could cause them harm. Though it didn't happen to them themselves, they just witnessed it or they heard about it. And since we're talking about parenting, it's important to pay attention to this because sometimes we stay around children and we tell stories and we think, oh, they're just kids, they don't understand. Maybe you have a 1 or 2 or 3-year-old that is around you playing and you're telling stories with your friend or your spouse and you're talking about this terrible thing that happened to this person or even something that happened to you yourself. And you don't realize that in recounting that thing to the hearing of the child, even though the child may not seem to be paying attention, you may be traumatizing that child. So it's important that we pay attention to the fact that even a child just hearing something or witnessing something that happens to someone else, but particularly if it's someone that is their primary caregiver, which most of the time is the mother, anything that looks as if it's harmful to the mother, to the primary caregiver, can potentially cause psychological trauma to a child. So I just want to start with that introduction. Now, let me move to, I've told us what psychological trauma is. So now let's look at real issues. What are the sort of things that could cause trauma to a child that we should be informed about as parents so that we ensure that we do the best that we can to manage the situation for our children? So bereavement, for instance, if a family member dies or a friend or somebody close, somebody that the child knows and everybody knows, we tend to think that children don't really understand death, so we don't really need to talk to them about it. So we talk about it as adults. And that is a very huge mistake. So bereavement is a major cause of psychological trauma. And as we go on, we'll talk about the things we need to do. Definitely, we should not ignore them. Definitely, we should not assume that the children don't understand that it doesn't really affect them just because maybe they are still playing around and doing the things they do. Physical assault, domestic abuse, and the assault may be on the child. Sometimes in the name of correction, we beat children to the extent that it forms a wound in their souls that they never forget. I'm sure some of us as adults still remember certain things that happened in our childhood that was supposed to be some kind of correction our parents were giving us, but it caused us so much distress and so much pain that even as adults, we remember it with some degree of fear or anger or shame or something, so some degree of physical assault can be traumatic to a child. Sexual abuse, those ones are obvious that those are traumatic. Even financial ruin. Sometimes you see in a family, maybe the parents are reasonably well-to-do and somewhere along the line, something happens. Maybe one parent loses their job or both, or something happens to their finances. Maybe they make a poor business decision and suddenly they find that they have to step down their livelihood. Maybe they have to sell their car. They are now going by public transport, which there's nothing wrong with it. But the point is, when there is a drastic change in the way that you live, we tend to think about it as the problem of the adults, and that the children, you just make arrangements for them and they get on with their lives. But this is not so. It affects the children deeply, and we need to take specific action and pay attention to our children when these things happen. More obvious things, we know that bullying, there's a lot of talk these days about bullying. Bullying affects children, whether it's in school or in the neighborhood or whatever. Even when we tell stories like in Nigeria now, we talk about kidnapping. There's a lot of kidnapping, terrorism. In some neighborhoods, there's violence, maybe cult wars and things like that. These are things that could cause psychological trauma to a child. But even things that we think are really harmless, like in the interaction of parents with children, sometimes we speak words that are very hurtful when we're not happy with a child. And some of those words remain with them for life, causing them a lot of pain and affecting so many other things, even when they become adults, when you think it's been forgotten, affecting the way they think of themselves, their self-esteem, the way they relate with other people, even the way they relate with God. Because you see that you may not know it, but the way that a primary caregiver relates with a child gives the person a subconscious impression of what any caregiver would be. So when you say to a child, for instance, that God is your father, if the child has a father that is violent, the subconscious understanding is probably that God is violent. You have to go out of your way to do certain things to get that child not to relate their personal experience with that word or those words. So that brings us to, for people who are interested in finding out more, you can find out about adverse childhood experiences. There have been a lot of studies done across the world about what is called adverse childhood experiences, which are experiences that people have within the age of 0 to 17 years that could potentially affect them for the rest of their lives if they are not properly managed. And it includes acts of commission, like we have talked about, abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, but also acts of omission, like neglect. Sometimes you haven't beaten the child, you haven't sexually abused the child, but the child is neglected. They don't pay attention. You see some children, they go to school and people ask, did they come out of a house where there are parents? Because you can see they look shabby. They are not, sometimes they look hungry. They just look like nobody has paid attention. So these things are things that can also cause psychological trauma within a child that may have some effects much later in adulthood. Having a family member who is an alcoholic or an addict, or even a prostitute, living lifestyles that confuse a child, these are things that can cause trauma in the life of a child. Also, when you have a compromised sense of safety or stability, for instance, if you have a parent or parents that you're not sure when they're going to be around, you're not sure if your school fees will be paid, you're not sure, the child is just almost as if they're on their own, stumbling through life. There's a lot of instability. And for some children, it is being passed from one caregiver to another. Today, okay, you go and stay with grandma. Maybe next year, you stay with auntie so-so. You go and stay with this. That passing the child from one hand to the other, these are the things that can cause very serious trauma to children. At the time, it may not look as if it's causing much damage, but you may be surprised that when the person becomes an adult, many things begin to happen that you will not link to what has happened in childhood. So it's important for us to know these things. So long-term effect of these adverse childhood experiences. It's been found studies have been done that have found that adverse childhood experiences on the long term, children that have been exposed to these things are more likely to come down with chronic health problems like heart disease, like diabetes, like autoimmune diseases, and so on and so forth, mental illness. They are also more likely to go into substance use problems, all kinds of drugs, alcohols, and hard drugs, and so on. And children that have been exposed to adverse childhood experiences, it also tends to negatively impact their education because they don't give their best when they are going through that. So most of the time, they end up not being some of the brightest, in the school. And so that would affect their performance in education. It will affect the kind of job opportunities that they have. And of course, that also means it will affect their earning potential, what they earn as adults. So witnessing domestic violence is one of the very traumatic things that can happen to children, and I need to highlight it here. A child that witnesses their father or their mother, I know more often than not it's mothers that are victims, being physically abused or verbally abused by the other parent, it leaves a huge wound that lasts a long time in their lives. Even when it is done behind closed doors and they actually don't see it, they know that it's happening. It affects them. It affects their emotional development, their psychological development. Okay. So it doesn't mean that everybody that is exposed to these things will automatically have problems as an adult. Let me just put in that caveat. But some people will experience these things, and for 1, 2, 3 reasons, they may be resilient enough to recover fully that as adults, it may not affect them. But there is no way of knowing who is going to be affected and who is not. And because of that, it's important to, take action to prevent as much as possible, to manage, and to find out how to identify signs that these things may be there and begin to do something to ameliorate the situation. So what are the things that we may see? We may see in a child that has undergone adverse childhood experiences, that is traumatized by it, that they keep having problems regulating their emotions. There's a 10-year-old boy that I know that once you upset him, he just becomes like an animal. He loses all control. He can use a knife and stab someone. And then much later, maybe 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, no matter how long it takes, when he recovers, as it were, he starts feeling bad and saying, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I did that, So you find they have difficulties with regulating emotions. They have difficulties relating with people, with relationships, forming healthy relationships with people. And you may find that if it's a young child that has achieved certain milestones, they may begin to regress, lose some of those milestones. For instance, if it's a young child that has achieved bladder control, is no longer wetting the bed, when they have been traumatized, they may start wetting the bed again. They have problem with attention and academic difficulties, and they may have problem with sleeping and eating. Eating, they may eat much less, lose appetite, not want to eat, or they may begin to eat too much. So just eating, problems with eating, and it can go on either extreme. And you can also find that these children complain of pains, aches and pains. You keep, maybe go to the hospital, you check, you treat, but they keep having these recurrent aches and pains that you may not be able to put your finger on exactly what's going on. With the older children, they tend to begin to exhibit risky behaviors, doing things that are risky, start experimenting with alcohol, with drugs, engage in sexual activity, maybe start looking for bikes or vehicles and driving fast, because of the effects of the trauma on their lives. So children of all ages, including toddlers and infants, can be affected, but the way it will manifest will be different depending on the age of the child and from personality to personality. I've talked about the effects that it can affect the health. Yeah. let me move on from that. But the good news is that all these things can be prevented. They don't have to happen. Even as we're here educating ourselves, this is part of why we're doing this. If you can create and sustain a safe, stable, and nurturing relationship and environment for the children, even if they go through difficulties, they will be able to come through it without it leaving lasting effects on them and be able to achieve their full potential. So even as we say, or as the studies have shown, that the most common cause of trauma to children comes from their primary caregivers, which are their parents. The interesting thing is also that it is their parents who are best positioned to help to prevent trauma to the children and to help them to recover if they've already been exposed. So it's good news. It may look like bad news, but it's also good news. It means we can do something about it. We're not helpless, you know. So at this point, I'd like us to listen to the story of Peter. Unyime, who is going to read the story of Peter for us?
Are we doing that, Ma?
Okay, Dorcas, go ahead. And I'd like everybody to pay close attention to that story because it illustrates a lot of what we're talking about, childhood trauma, how it happens, and what can be done to help a child recover from it. Go ahead.
Okay. The story of Peter. A 7-year-old boy named Peter lives in a village. He has 4 brothers and sisters. He enjoys going off to school with his friends each morning. The teacher tells his father he is a bright boy and is already learning to read. In the afternoon, Peter runs around with his friends and does small jobs for his mother until it's time to eat. One day, Peter notices that his father is spending a lot of time talking with the men of the village. He begins to worry about what is going on. No one talks to him about it. Suddenly, one night, his older sister shakes him awake, shouting, Peter, Peter, get up, quickly, quickly. The whole family runs out of the house, and he and his family run for safety. He hears some shots. He looks around and sees the family of one of his friends running behind them, and then he sees his friend fall to the ground dead. By the next day, his whole family, along with 4 other families, reaches a place in the forest where some crops are growing. Peter's father takes charge, and everyone works hard to make grass shelters. No one talks to Peter about seeing his friend shot dead, and he tries to forget it. Every day, Peter's father leads prayers and singing with everyone, and they read the Bible. Every time anyone gets sick, everyone prays very seriously to God to heal that person because they have no medicines. Peter starts to get scared of being sick. At night, he has nightmares and cries out in fear. After a month, they find that it is safe to return to their village. Eventually, school starts again, but Peter doesn't really want to go. When his father makes him go, he gets into trouble with his teacher because he is not learning as well as he used to. He is scared to leave the house and jumps at every loud noise. At night, he wakes up the whole family with his screaming and crying. Sometimes he wets the bed, though he never did that before the attack. He walks around looking sad and seldom wants to play with his friends. Okay, and seldom wants to play with his friends. When he does, he wants to play war and often finishes up fighting with them. Every night, he puts his teams together in case they have to run away again, even though his sisters laugh at him for doing this. Peter's parents and school teachers don't understand why he is behaving like this or what to do. When he wets himself, his mother beats him. This makes him cry more but doesn't change his behavior. Some people say that he is a witch or has an evil spirit. Finally, Peter's parents visit Pastor Mark and tell him about Peter's situation, sorry. Hannah, Pastor Mark's wife, had just finished a training in the capital city on how to take care of children who have experienced bad things. Hannah asked Peter's parents, what is Peter thinking now about the war? His parents looked at each other blankly. His father slowly says, I have no idea. Peter needs to talk about what he experienced, says Hannah. For a child, the best way to do this is to get him to draw a picture of what happened when you had to run for safety. Peter's parents go home and give him some paper and crayons. He draws a series of pictures, and then his father sits down with him and says, "Tell me about what happened in this first picture." Peter tells him about what he remembers on the night of the attack. Then his father asks, "How did you feel?" Peter tells how he was so afraid. His father asks, "What was the most difficult part for you?" Peter begins to cry. He says, "I couldn't help my friend." As Peter explains the picture, his feelings come out, and finally he cries and cries as his father holds him. It is a turning point as Peter talks about what happened. His behavior starts to improve. After a while, he becomes the playful boy he once was.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dorcas.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So you can see from that story, usually at this point, I would have liked to have a back and forth, but I don't know to what extent we can do that. You can see there's a lot in that story that tells us, about the sort of things that can cause trauma and the sort of ways we as parents respond. Peter is 7 years old. There's a crisis. They're running away. His friend is shot, but everybody's trying to survive quite all right. But notice that culturally, parents in our environment, we don't ask children questions about how they feel. We don't ask them questions about experiences, things they have witnessed. And this is what played out in Peter's life. And you saw how it affected his life. An easygoing, playful boy doing well in school, suddenly his personality changes. He doesn't want to go to school. And when he goes, he's doing badly in school. He doesn't want to play with his friends. When he plays, he only wants to fight. He's packing his things every night in case they need to run away again. Oh, and he's wetting the bed when he wasn't wetting it before. These are things that when you witness in a child, you just think that, why is this child behaving badly? You were not like this before. Or have you joined bad company? There are all kinds of ways that we interpret these things. But when we are trauma informed, we recognize that these are signs that this boy has gone through something. And that is why the pastor's wife, who had some training in trauma and recognizing it, when she came, she knew what to do. She knew they had to talk to that child. And when they asked the parents, what does Peter think about what is going on? The parents looked at themselves. Of course, they don't know what Peter thinks. Nobody asks Peter what he thinks. He's just a child. But you see, the right questions were asked. What happened? How did you feel? What was the hardest part for you? And these are 3 very important questions that we can ask, especially older children who are able to respond. The younger ones who don't have enough speech, maybe they are not mature enough and may not be able to express themselves, we can give them what they gave Peter, which is give a piece of paper or give something and say, draw. And when they draw, ask them questions. Oh, what did you draw? What is this? Just as it happened in the story. So there are things, these are things that we can do. That story is very graphic and explains what can cause trauma and what can be done to help it. So when children are exposed to trauma, it affects their bodies, it affects their emotions, it affects their behaviors. For instance, their bodies, in the case of Peter, he was now wetting the bed long after he had stopped. Some children may begin to have speech impediments, start stuttering when they were not stuttering before, or some may become completely mute, stop talking. You see a child that was talking before and just suddenly they can't talk again. Like I've talked about the appetite, they could lose appetite or eat excessively. And for some children, you might notice an escalation of allergic tendencies. If they had allergies before, it can become more severe. If they were asthmatic before, they can start having more frequent asthmatic attacks as a result of the traumatic exposure. And they can complain of all sorts of body symptoms and in different parts of their body. In terms of their emotions, usually things that wouldn't make them afraid, you may find that they begin to be afraid of everything. They begin to be startled. They begin to anticipate something terrible will happen at every point in time. They begin to be very, angry, irritable, aggressive, unnecessarily aggressive. They may cry a lot, and some may just lose interest in life. They just withdraw. They don't want to do anything. They just stay by themselves, looking very preoccupied with just their thoughts, their sad thoughts. And some children might even interpret it that maybe it's something I did that caused that, and start having feelings of guilt. So especially if maybe something happened to someone else and they were there, they might start having what we call survival guilt. If the other person died and I'm alive, why? Maybe there's something, I did. So these are ways that the emotions can be affected. We've talked about their behaviors. They may revert to childish behaviors. Some children may begin to act out what happened, the thing that caused them the trauma, the distress. If you watch them playing, they may begin to act it out. We've talked about poor school performance. Very little children may become very clingy, holding on to the parents, not wanting to leave them, crying a lot, having separation anxiety. Rebelling against authority figures. This usually happens with the more older children. They can become very rebellious, a child that was usually well behaved. Some might even go to the extent of engaging in some kind of self-harm, having suicidal thoughts and thinking of harming themselves or taking their own lives. And interestingly, some children will respond to trauma by taking on responsibility, trying to compensate for what has happened. So people look at them and say, oh, this is a good child. The child is, since this thing happened, is just doing everything, be careful. That child needs care when they start doing too much. So let me just mention here that in these days that we're very much aware of mental health, and some of us go to see specialists, professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, and so on. We should be careful about certain diagnoses. There are certain diagnoses that may be hiding. It may be a traumatic experience or traumatic experiences that the child has gone through, but it will manifest with symptoms of certain diagnoses like ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a very common diagnosis people give now. Be careful with that diagnosis. You need to be very clear that if the child has gone through trauma, you deal with it so that you know if it's purely ADHD or it's just masking trauma. Oppositional defiant disorder, you see that with children that rebel violently against authority. Bipolar disorders, borderline personality disorders, these are some diagnoses that may be hiding trauma. So we need to watch out for that. So what can we do as parents to help the children? The first thing to do is, you as a parent, have you taken the time to get information and to explore whether you have your own hidden traumas that are not resolved? Because if you haven't done that, you might find that your own behavior and your parenting may be driven by the wrong things. It may be negative, distressing experiences you had yourself, which you have not resolved, that are driving certain ways that you behave, certain ways that you treat your child. So it is very important that you go and take care of yourself and take time to understand yourself. If you need to see a professional, you do that. See where you have issues and get those things dealt with so that you are helping your child from a place of mental health yourself and not from a place where you are broken. So this is very important. And it's important to, in the process, share with the children that, of course, with wisdom, you don't have to give graphic details, that somebody can have problems like this. So people can have traumatic experiences and it may affect them, but there are ways that they can be solved. You can see a specialist, you can get access to information and help yourself to heal from those things, so that the children know You model a healthy example that even if they do have problems, they will not hide it, or they will not pretend they don't have it. They will know that people can have issues, but that they can recover from them by seeking help. Parents who have not walked through their own heart wounds find it very difficult to help their children, even with the best of intentions. So, what does it take to help our children to become self-confident and capable adults, resilient? It's very important that children have steady and predictable parents. It's very important to be steady and predictable. Your children should be able to know that they can depend on you, that you're dependable. You shouldn't be that parent that the child, if they have a problem, they don't know what you're going to do. They don't know whether you will show up. They don't know whether you will come to school if you're required to. It's important that children have steady and predictable parents. It's also important that we as parents communicate to our children that we delight in them, that they are a joy in our lives. Whatever is the circumstance of the birth of a child, we should not use that against them. Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Please let me know if you can.
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, yes. So it's important that we delight in our children and that we communicate to them that we delight in them, that they are a delight in our lives. Even if it was a child that you did not plan for, even if it was a child that was born out of rape, even if whatever the circumstances, don't make that child feel responsible for whatever was the circumstance of their birth. There was a young lady that I was counseling recently, and her mother had girls, baby girls in quick succession. And when the mother was pregnant again for her, the father said, I hope this is not another girl. And when she came out as a girl, he left, and the mother treated her very badly all her childhood and saying, you are the one that made my husband leave me. This is a child. What does she know? How? So we have to be really careful as parents that we don't traumatize our children with our own experiences. For us to have resilient, self-confident children who become adults, capable adults who become the best version, number one, like I said, we must be steady and predictable parents. We must be parents who delight in our children. We delight in the things that they do, in their little successes. It doesn't have to be big. Congratulate them, celebrate their little successes, their abilities, their achievements. These are things that leave an impression in the heart and mind of a child that help them to become confident adults. We must be parents who help our children organize themselves. Don't be that parent that you're so busy with your own life that you leave the children to sort out themselves between them and the housekeeper or whatever. So let your child not be that one that when they go to school, the teachers are always asking, you didn't do your homework. What happened? You didn't bring your book. You're not wearing the right uniform. Today is the sports day. All those things. We should be parents who help our children organize their lives. Whatever we're doing, we need to make time. You see, childhood is not forever. It's for a short time. And before you know it, they are gone and you can't have it back. So whatever you need to do to be available in that time, and I'm not saying everybody should be a full-time housewife or something, but in your work, in whatever you do, understand that it is very important to give quality time and attention to the child for your own peace later. Because if they become adults that are terrorizing the neighborhood, you are the one that will not have peace too. So we should be parents who are steady and predictable. We should delight in our children, in their achievements, in their discoveries. We should encourage them. We should help them organize their comings and their goings. And we should serve as role models for them for self-care by the way we care for ourselves. We should be role models to them for relationships by the way we relate to other people. And if we have defects in any of these areas, it can affect the child. For instance, a child who has been ignored or is always humiliated. Sometimes we humiliate our children, we think we're playing. You keep making fun of the child, running them down, and so on, thinking it's funny. A child that is chronically humiliated is likely to lack self-respect. As an adult, they will not respect themselves. And a child who has not been allowed to assert themselves will have difficulty standing up for themselves as adults. As adults, people will bully them easily. And you might even find that as adults, it will be easy for them to be abused, sexually abused and abused in other ways, because they haven't learned to assert themselves. A child that was brutalized in childhood, maybe beaten up a lot, you find that that child as an adult is one of those people that are always angry. They carry a smoldering rage that it takes a lot of energy for them to contain themselves, because they are still raging from the things that were done for them when they felt they were helpless children. Also, you may find that they have problem with relationships with people. Children who had a lot of pain and deprivation early in life tend to not have sympathy or empathy for other people when people are going through things. And they easily think that everybody is against them, because they've gone through so much suffering in their childhood that they find it difficult to sympathize with people. They find it difficult to understand, what other people are going through and try to support people. So it's very important that, we spare these children pain and deprivation as much as we can. So what do we do if actually the children have gone through traumatic experiences? What do we do as parents? Number one is, because some of the manifestations of trauma are bad behavior, the way we look at it, we have to be very aware that we don't meet bad behavior with violence. We need to be patient and gentle. When children are upset, they are not able to think clearly, and they cannot learn or change their behavior. So instead of thinking first of, how you would deal with them, it is best to talk gently to them. Even if you're asking, why did you do that? Whatever, but be calm and, regulate yourself, be calm. If you're shouting and you're all over the place, you're not helping them and you're not helping yourself. You have to be calm. Take a deep breath if you need to. If you need to take a few minutes before you address the child, do it. But when you do address the child, be calm and talk gently, so that you communicate to them, you ask them questions, whatever, you try to find out what is going on. Even if they are not able to talk at that time, if you maintain that calm and understanding response and continue to interact with them at that level, at some point, you're going to get something out of them. You're more likely to get some information or get some idea of what is going on. We should also learn to listen to children. When we don't talk to them and we just talk around them, among us as adults, and we don't tell them things, they pick up things. Some of them, they misinterpret them. Some, they turn it into something else with their little minds, and they fill in missing information with whatever their fantasy comes up with. Sometimes when they tell you what they've made out of the small thing they heard from you, you'll be so shocked but that's not what I said. Children have a mind that manufactures things. So it's important that if something serious happens, you sit down and talk to them, especially when something bad has happened. If there's been a bereavement, if there's been a loss, if there has been anything that could affect a child, don't just carry on. Sit down and talk. If you have whatever number of children you have, talk to each of them individually. Ask them questions. Don't just talk to them like tell them things, but ask them, what do you think is happening? And then explain as much as possible according to what is age appropriate for each one. Try to give them information so that they don't manufacture things and they don't go and hear wrong information from people outside. And if you're talking to them and trying to find out, you can use the 3 listening questions that was used in the story. What happened? How did you feel? What was the hardest part for you? And like I said, this works for children who are old enough to articulate their thoughts and their feelings. So it's important to talk about bad things when they happen. Let's not, cover it and say, go away and play. Adults are talking. Let each child talk and let them express themselves. We have said that children that are younger than school age, you can give them something to use and draw and see it, and ask them around their drawing. They may express themselves through the drawing by saying, oh, this person is doing this here, and then you figure out what they are thinking and know how to reassure them. Or also, you can also watch them when they are at play. When they play with each other, they tend to act out something that has happened if it's still on their mind, if it's still bothering them. Okay, I've talked about the drawing. Also, if children have bad dreams, like in the story, Peter was crying at night and having bad dreams, nightmares, you can ask them to tell you about the dream, encourage them to talk about the dream, and see if there is a link between the dream. That most often there will be some kind of link, and explain to them that it's going to go. It's because of so thing that happened, and reassure them, and generally encourage them. But let them talk. Let them talk about it. Their talking is very important, not just what you say. Another thing that helps children who have gone through traumatic experiences is to establish routines. Let there be a predictability to their lives in the face of what has happened. They should wake up knowing that I wake up at 6 o'clock, then we go to school, then when we come back from school, we have siesta, we have lunch, then we go and play, then we pray, then bedtime, give them routines. That having a routine puts in some predictability in their lives. Because when children have gone through traumatic experiences, it makes it look as if life is all confused. So establishing routines and working with those routines really helps them to recover more quickly. It gives them something to look forward to, and it's predictable. They know that this will happen at this time. They are not worried. And it's important that you allow them include play in whatever the routine is. So it's not just serious things. Also, if it's something that has affected the family, maybe like a bereavement or a loss or whatever that trauma is, heal together. Call them as a family, have a time each day to meet and talk about the day, including the smallest child. Ask the smallest child, what was the best thing that happened to you today? What was the worst thing that happened to you today? Let them speak, let them bring it out. Then you pray and you sing together, you encourage them. Everybody is together and healing together. It's also important that any activity you start with children, especially children who have gone through traumatic experiences, you finish it. Finishing activities is very symbolic. If you start something and you don't finish it, it increases the confusion in their mind. It creates that unpredictability to life. So any activity you start, make sure you finish it so that there is that sense of, finishing. It restores their sense of security, that future is not out of control. It's important that we tell the children the truth about situations. If somebody has died, don't tell them the person traveled. If you say the person traveled, tomorrow when you want to travel, they will start crying because they think you will never come back, And we should also be careful the way we say the person has gone to heaven, because sometimes in the mind of a child, they may not understand the concept of heaven if they are very little. So tomorrow when you tell them, look, I want you to serve God so that you will go to heaven, they will say, I don't want to serve God. I don't want to go to heaven, if they understand heaven to be death, So we have to tell them the truth and be careful the way we couch it, the kind of words that we use. If there is still any danger, if it's something that has happened and there's still danger, let's say maybe if there's something in the neighborhood, if there is cult gangs or whatever, and you're still living in that neighborhood, and you need to communicate that to them, explain to them what danger is. The danger is that it's still existing, and the plans you have put in place to protect them. Don't just keep quiet, but don't also exaggerate it and make them to now become terribly fearful. And when you have all these conversations with them, also give them room. Yes, you ask them what they think, but also give them room to ask you questions, and so that you know what's going on in their minds and know how to answer to help them. It's also important, especially when a child has gone through difficult times, to help them to maintain their faith in God. Because even as adults, we have questions. Why did God let this happen? Was it my fault? So you can imagine children have their own questions. Some of the questions we don't have answers for, but let them ask. And the one you know, you give. The one you don't know, you can't. It's okay to say, honestly, I don't know. I'm even asking that question myself. So it makes the child feel that they are not alone. Pray together with them, talk to God in their own way. So I think I'm going to round up here. I may have taken more time, and I will just round up by saying that whatever children go through, we as their parents we're in the best position to help them to recover from them. We are also in the best position to prevent further traumatic experiences by arming ourselves with information and applying those things. But also, most importantly, by taking the time to take care of our own selves, to explore where we have issues that are unresolved that could be affecting our lives, so that when we fix ourselves, we're in a better position to fix our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ma. It was really an insightful session. God bless you so much for teaching us. Yeah, I've learned so much. Thank you so much, Ma. Okay, somebody asked a question earlier when you were speaking about what to do to eliminate the trauma. Somebody asked, what if you don't know if you are traumatized? So, as a parent, you don't know if you are traumatized. So how do you handle such situation?
Okay. At this point, I'll probably advertise myself. You can come to my class.
Awesome.
So, I have classes, and in fact, I have a whole 12-hour session. Dr. Onyime, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes, ma.
So Dr. Onyime is Onyime, what are you? Are you a witness or are you a beneficiary? So yes, we can go through that. We have a whole curriculum that we go through, and you can go through it and be able to find out. It helps you to explore, find out what's going on with me. Is there a problem here? Isn't there a problem there? And then we walk through it. We have a step-by-step process. We walk through it and help you to know what to do to heal from whatever trauma, if there is, that is unresolved in your life. But seriously, even apart from me, I mean, if you have access to other resources, but the thing is, go out and find out. I mean, like all of us, we're encouraged to, we go and do medical checkups now, don't we? They tell you to go and do medical checkup, regular checkup. So it's the same thing. So do the checkup, at least do that initial one to know what's going on with you. Yeah.
Okay. That's nice. Thank you so much, Ma. Okay, so Ma, what if I have a question? This is just me asking now. It's a personal question. Yeah. So what if it has to do with maybe a family member, not your child? Like for me now, I'm very young, I'm not yet married. So how do you handle a child who's traumatized, and how do you talk to the parents? Let's say the parents are not aware of what to do. How do you come into such situation to like talk to the parents, talk to the child? How do you come in there?
Okay, now, first of all, I want to congratulate you that you're getting the information early enough.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So you are well armed before you go in. That's great. Two, while parents should help their children, sometimes parents are not even in a position to help. maybe because their own problems, they haven't solved it yet. So somebody nearby, like you, can help that child. I've given you some information now about things you can do.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be the parents. If they can do it, that will be fine. But if they can't, but you are there and you have access to the child, you can also be that person that is steady and dependable for the child, that celebrates that child, that celebrates their wins, that is there for them. So all those things I said parents should do or be to their child to help the children to become, resilient adults.
Yes.
You can be to that child, even if you're not the parent.
Okay.
I think the parents should. So, but if you can, that's why we say any child you see anywhere. You know that saying, they say it takes a village. As that is your child, and do what apply the information you have. I've shared a lot of information with you here today. You can share that information with the parents also.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ma. We have another question here. Somebody say, what if we have made mistakes already? The way we may have spoken to or treated the child once around us, how do we correct this?
Awesome. I love that question. You know why I love it? Because the truth is that all of us have made mistakes already. There is no perfect parent. But the thing is, at any point that you recognize that the way you're going about your parenting is not in the best interest of the child, you decide to change. It's never too late to change. There's a parent I know, she really used to have a rough time with her children. And then she decided, she exposed herself to all this information and began to apply them. Her son called her one day and said, "Mommy, you have changed, though. Remember you used to fight with me,
Aww.
So it's so funny. The children will notice. They will notice. And it will make a difference. So you never give up. You don't give up on yourself and you don't say, oh, I've messed it up. There's nothing I can do. Just start now. The best time to have started was 20 years ago. The next best time is now.
Now, yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank
Welcome.
you. That was really insightful. So we have somebody here who just raised up her hand. Milton, could you please unmute and speak to us? I think you have a question.
All right. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Yes. My name is Hamilton.
Oh, hi. Welcome, sir.
Hi.
Thank you. Dr. Chika, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Hamilton. Good to hear from you.
So thank you so much, ma.
You're
I've
welcome.
been following this session, and then I just wanted to ask a question. While you were talking about raising a child and all of those things, I remember when I was small, I showed my wife a mark in my hand. I went to steal meat in the pot. And then my mother decided to say that she will leave a mark in my hand that I will never forget. So whenever I look at the mark, I remember that it was when I went to steal a meat from the pot.
Yeah.
And my mother caught me and decided to leave a mark in my hand. So, and that mark is still there. Whenever I look at the mark, I just remember what happened. Okay, that was almost more than 30-something years ago. I just want to ask a question about raising a child that has a strong will. So you tell the child, do this, and the child tells you no. And the way I was raised, you can't look at your mom and dad and tell them no. They have not, something must be wrong with you.
Who born you?
Yes, for you to look at them and said no. So sometimes I would like to use the rod, all right? But at some point, I'm also telling myself, okay, should I talk or just talking? And so, just listening to all that you are saying about raising a child and some of the traumas in terms of discipline and everything, how do we reconcile raising a child that is strong-willed, all right, that has a mind of his own?
Yeah.
And then that talking alone, how do you reconcile using the rod? and at the same time talking. Okay. In view of the fact that my mother burnt my hand with a rod. She literally put the iron inside the fire and brought it out and put it on my hand.
Wow.
Okay. So in view of the fact, how do you now handle a child that has a strong will?
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, I think I'll start by saying, I'm so sorry you have that wound that you can still see today. Yes, I'm sure your mother meant well, and definitely I'm sure you never went to steal meat again, but
I will never.
Yes, but the question is, did it have to get to that for you to learn the lesson? You know, so to answer your question about a child that is strong-willed, a strong will or any other quality that a person has can be good or bad. That's the first thing. So recognize that there is a positive application of that strong will, and look for how to encourage that child to apply it positively. Strong-willed children often make good leaders. So the first thing you do is not to criminalize the strong will, but to appreciate it and let the child know that this your strong will is a great quality. You will make a good leader, and I'm going to help you. That aside, I want to address the very issue you're talking about, which is the rod, whether you should actually beat a child as punishment. I'm of the opinion that you can beat a child and you can speak to a child too. But I will have a caveat. I have a caveat. Number one is it depends on the age of the child. There is an age that a child reaches that you should not beat them or they will beat you when they start becoming teenagers. So you have to start looking for other ways. But when it's a child that is relatively, younger, you can beat the child, but you have to do it in a very intentional manner. And what that means is, if a child does something wrong and you just found out that the child did that, the natural reaction is for you to be angry. If you use that rage and beat that child, you will not achieve what you want to achieve, which is the correction. If you need to take some time off, go and cool down. When you are calm, call the child and sit the child down and say, you see this thing you did? It is not acceptable. And it's not acceptable because 1, 2, 3. But because you have done it, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to give you 3 strokes. And if you do it next time, I'm going to give you 5 strokes, or I'm going to give you some other punishment or whatever. Point being, have a rational, calm conversation with this child about the discipline and then deliver the discipline. And when you deliver it, be consistent. And what I mean by this consistency is, if the child does that thing again, be consistent in delivering the correction. Don't beat him today and tomorrow you overlook it, because he will not learn the lesson if you're not consistent. So there has to be consistency, and that consistency also means that if his brother or sister does the same thing, they will get the same punishment. So you are trying to teach something. Beating a child must be to teach something. It should not be to vent your frustration or your rage as a parent. I hope I have helped you with that answer.
That was really insightful, Ma. Thank you so much. I learned so much. I think the point that hit me most was when you say strong-willed children have the tendency to be the greatest leaders, like to be the best leaders. I really, 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 I never thought about this part of it. I always felt because they are strong-willed, they have evil spirits, they are bad children. But today I know. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you, Ma. So we are really glad to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much to our participants. Although we are not so much today, but I believe that next time will be better. And we hope to have you again next time, Ma, if you don't
No,
mind.
no
Thank you so
problem.
much, Ma. Thank you. It was nice having you, Ma. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you. It was good to be here too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ma. I appreciate you so much for joining us.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Thank you to
Yes.
our Miss Hamilton, yeah, Miss Oyemi Hamilton, our founder. She's been really insightful. She's been amazing, and we appreciate all of you for coming. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Ma. We have learned a lot. God bless you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Brenda. I hear you. You're bringing up a leader there.
Thank you, Ma.
So
All right.
thank you for showing up. And I hope that you will use the information I've given you. Don't just hear it and keep it. Please use it, even this week. Think of one thing or two that I said and apply it, either to your child or to a child around you this week. Make a difference with the information that you got. Thank you.
We'll make you proud. Thank you, Ma.
Okay,
Thank you, Ma. So nice having you. Bye, Ma.
okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.